Welcome back everyone to another episode of Price Targets with your host Bitcoin Jack. There's a lot to catch up on, so we're going to be talking quite a bit longer than usual. I think maybe 15 minutes is not going to cut it here. Let's see how long it's going to take. Bitcoin did a pretty sharp reversal. We're going to be talking about that and where I think it's going to go from here. And then obviously there's there's a really good ETH macro play, I think, loading up. The on-chain metrics that we talked about a couple of weeks ago look very, very good at this very moment, which didn't look as good back then, or maybe I interpreted it in a way that needed confirmation. And then I do think there's some potential long setup on Litecoin too. So just stay tuned. First, I want your attention for Prime XBT. They're the sponsor of this video series, and I want to thank them for offering you guys the opportunity to deposit coins to Prime and get 50% bonus on your first deposit up to 0.5 BTC. So if you use the link in the description below and the promo code BitcoinJack, you will be allowed to get that bonus. There's a few things that apply, conditions, so make sure you're aware of that. But thank you Prime for sponsoring, and if you appreciate these videos, please consider using the ref link in the description below. Thank you. All right, so Bitcoin, let's kind of go back and look at what happened. Basically, if I want to explain how I view the market, this is literally where, in my opinion, the market should have, quote unquote, die if it was gonna happen. And instead, what happened is, this became a fake out. Then it kind of reclaimed the range here, and then it just started to move through the entire range. So essentially, I missed out on the exact bottom here. I even missed out on this here, and a lot of my synthetic cash positions got stopped out around here, and then I still had a bunch of stables, etc., etc., etc. So then, as it arrived into the range high here, that was kind of a tricky moment, in my opinion. As I've documented on Twitter, I was in the firm belief that any dip was going to be a buying opportunity, and that this was kind of an accumulation. What kind of made me sway my bias entirely was the moment where I saw the on-chain metrics that I discussed in the last video and the video before. That started to look very, very, very strong. So I do think that there's a lot of upside potential here on Bitcoin. One thing, so right now we're capped right here by this resistance. There's this diagonal here, kind of a chufa-chof, of however you call it, fork, which does make me believe that we're, eventually this month are going to revisit the region close to all-time high. So maybe not entirely get there, maybe go slightly past it. Maybe we're gonna get stuck in this range for some time, but I think the direction is up. This retest right here aligns with the impulse that caused the consolidation in Feb to break out to do these new highs, and then the low here is of, it's not entirely the yearly low, but it's kind of the same impulse of here. So kind of has the same kind of energy going up here, and now we're kind of breaking through all these resistances. What we can see on chain is that what was not particularly obvious until I think around here, even actually here, is that a lot of the volume on the exchanges has moved to strong hands, but wasn't moved on chain yet. So it kind of, it was either held in custodian wallets on exchanges or kept somewhere, but didn't move on chain. So it was kind of hard to see and understand that these long-term holders actually did buy everything, and they kind of waited to move that, making it a little bit more, making it a bit less transparent and stuff. So that was pretty interesting. I do think that this has a very high potential to form the bottom of the fourth wave. Let's see if I can find. Yeah. So essentially, this is a chart you've seen on Twitter. I mean, there was a point where I did not exclude, going lower and then go up. But I think at this point, it's clear to me that the likelihood of wave 4 being finalized into upside, and how high that upside is going to be, I don't know. But I'm betting on upside as we start moving out of this range. And then, I think August is going to be inside this range. September may have like another steeper sell-off, and then I think we're off to the races. So essentially, let's see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. I have this green line here at 39,850, and in my opinion, that is one of the most significant levels we have below us, because it's the end of this impulse, which I do believe is more or less the end of the first wave of this entire move. So this, let's assume we, I do think that's the more likely probability, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Let's assume we do this, right? And eventually there's going to be kind of pullback. I think a lot of people are still skeptic. I think as we run into the 50s, people are going to be selling even more. And I think the dump is going to happen at the moment where everyone's just going to FOMO back into the positions they've been selling on the way up. But this is the end of wave 1, in my opinion, the most likely level. That kind of means that once this dumps, I want to see this level get respected. Like if we start to lose it, if we ever come down here and we just don't go back up, then I need to revise the idea of this actually, being the bottom play into wave 5 of, another pretty large bull run. So important level. And then the other thing I want to show, perhaps I'm just going to switch to a different chart here, just not to clutter this too much. If you've been following me for a while, you might remember my reasoning on baby fractals inside larger mama fractals, like baby mama fractals or whatever. So what I'm looking at here is a potential Livermore cylinder or an ascending broadening wedge, and so this is the bottom diagonal, and this is the upper diagonal, and then potentially we have a smaller one up here in this larger one. Okay, these can break down, and there's a possibility that this still needs to move down one last time into this region to complete the wedge and then start to break up. But at this point, the way the market's been buying, I'm not selling here. I might sell on weakness once we start to lose this, and then obviously I would buy back if it reclaims it. So there's support here, so be cautious when it starts to break down. But here we go. If this comes up here, it confirms a breakout of the baby fractal and then the mama fractal. And this is pretty sizey, this range. right? So let's assume this is where it's going to happen. This is a 35% range. In my opinion, we can, easily double that on a non-logarithmic scale. So if this breaks up, I think it's going to accelerate pretty steeply, a lot higher than a lot of people would anticipate. So that's kind of, I'm long on margin from around here, and then hopefully we see the breakout. We don't, I'll have to manage and cut it and take profit, and then hopefully get an opportunity here, one opportunity here, into new highs. But for now, I do think that this is just going to pop to the upside. I think that's kind of it for Bitcoin. Let's see. I mean, yeah, let's theorize. So we've seen a lot of FUD. There's a lot of uncertainty around the treasury bill, which is not really that big of a problem. So to summarize for people who are not up to date, there's a treasury bill, infrastructure bill in the US that's being voted upon by the Senate, and there is a portion of it that alludes to crypto, and what they want to do is, is the crypto people don't want to have certain regulations that force miners, validators, software developers to report to the IRS any customer information which they don't own. So essentially, if the bill is going to get passed like that eventually through the House, it does mean that miners or software developers or all these decentralized components are, in practice could be banned depending on how the text is interpreted later down the road. But the good thing is that there's going to be time to make amendments. They're going to be voting on the bill today in the Senate, and then tomorrow, and then, next year probably it's going to get to the House, and they're going to discuss it more. So I do think getting this much attention on the highest level in the US on regulatory stage is something bullish for the market overall, and it's not something I'm too concerned about. But there is a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of people, frankly, who are afraid for what's going to happen if this bill passes in an unfavorable way for crypto. Okay, so but generally, when there's a lot of FUD and markets move up, or they don't react to the downside when there's uncertainty, that's just a general sign of strength. And the market didn't die where it technically was supposed to happen, so that's also a really good thing. The on-chain metrics look very good. There is some heating of funding on futures, on perpetual futures, but not too bad. Like I think the only place that really has a little bit of a premium is FTX, and then the other exchanges are pretty much flat to neutral. So I wouldn't be concerned about that yet. There's definitely, I do think that you gotta consider taking profit in this zone, and that you will get opportunities to buy back at break even or maybe lower. So essentially, keep this level in mind here. Could go a little bit lower, but generally around this area, just below 40k should be respected for my thesis to remain correct. And then I think we can jump into ETH. So basically, the Ethereum improvement in proposal 1559 has been activated on the main chain with a London hard fork. So Ethereum is being burned, and there's quite a few people who are bullish on that, and I agree why. I think if we go to the chart and remember where we left off a couple of weeks ago, I was really thinking that this was gonna sell off further, but then this happened. It kind of had this deviation around here, and it started to rise. And there was a Twitter post where I showed this chart. So what I do think here is that this orange block, it's a weekly block that comes from the acceleration that kind of, let's see, took price down pretty much in a straight line by 60%. So this is resistance, but if we do claim it, after we already kind of tested it, we're going to be playing to actually gain this entire supply zone, or rather, in my opinion, this entire supply zone. I do think that if you do go past orange, which is kind of, the mid-level between this level here and this level there, then it's going to accelerate into not just this high, but I think it's going to go and test up here eventually. So that's kind of mega bullish, and we're going to have to see if that's going to work out. But if we look at the daily level so far, it kind of makes sense that this is going to pop, because we're holding this level. There's resistance up here, but I do think this is the first step here is that this is probably going to take out this high and this high, and I do think that we may get a deviation around this level. So let's see. Let's say it's going to follow this direct trajectory, then go up here. If it doesn't if it starts to bounce on this, I do think it probably is going to come back, retest this orange level, and then if that holds, that's going to be where I do think acceleration is going to happen into these levels up here. So Ethereum just looking primed for upside. Bitcoin looks primed for upside. I do think this is just going to extend into mega bullish territory. So where is that invalidated? Well, I'd start to get careful aggressively if we lose this. Okay, so 0.00680. I would wait for it to gain orange, then to actually start playing. Okay, if it loses that level. Otherwise, if it doesn't, I do think it's just going to go up. So tight invalidation here on a daily close is probably what I'm looking for. And then the other thing is Litecoin. It's been pretty quiet around Litecoin. And I do think it's time to kind of pay attention here. There's a wedge at the range low here. And then I don't know if it's going to be super bullish, but I do think there is a play to be had if it kind of pops here into at least green and potentially red with, it's kind of tricky, but I would have my stops below here. All right. I think that's kind of it. Like I could, yeah, let's dive into the S&P 500 for a quick second. Again, wise, the 13th of August is a flip point. So essentially what I do think is that market is going to start to react here. There's a bit of a wedge. It may go up, may go down. I'm not really sure what's going to happen, but what I do know that if it does break up, I'm kind of expecting, let's see, 20-25% increase in price in the next 6 months into the levels 5600. So if that kind of aligns with the whole infrastructure bill getting passed, 3.5 trillion plus another trillion is 4.5 trillion, and debt ceiling being raised, it's just going to be a lot of inflationary pressure, and then we'll have to see what's going to happen up here. But that could actually ignite also more upside in crypto. Kind of weird, confused by gold. Let's see, can find gold. Where are you? Oh, here. Yeah, so this thing is just, you know, puking. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it is weird. Like, kind of expected this to hold. You know, if this means that everyone's selling their gold for Bitcoin, I know that, then that's good, I guess. But ideally, we would see, you know, you'd like to see some strength here too, or maybe just, you know, maybe people are really losing faith in gold. I'm not really sure how to explain this move. Honestly confused. If anyone has any ideas, please let me know on Twitter. I mean, the same happened here with silver. It's really strange. So, oh yeah, I think this is pretty cool too. Mike's strategy is kind of, you know, having a good rally. It's back at range high. It's probably going to have a little bit of a resistance here, but if it does like claim this, because this is the deviation, then I think, you know, that does look very good, and that's only probably going to happen if Bitcoin is also going to rally. So maybe this is just cherry picking or wishful thinking, but it, you know, it does look promising for Bitcoin. I think that's really it. I mean, that's 21 minutes. I'm gonna prepare another video later this week where we're gonna discuss all these on-chain metrics a little bit more in depth. Really didn't have the time to load them up and show them what I told you, but that should be fun, and hopefully this was a good way of catching up, and see you next week.